Hello and welcome to Millie White Cooks. In my new step-by-step video, I'm going to share my scrumptious ultimate Christmas pudding recipe, which is completely gluten-free and dairy-free, vegetarian, and I'll even tell you how to make it vegan too, if that's your preference. Bursting with plumped dried fruits, crunchy nuts and festive spices, it's the perfect ending to your Christmas Day meal that everyone can enjoy. And what's more, you can make this weeks or even months in advance, ready for the big day. This recipe is from my gluten-free Christmas holiday festive feasts and treats cookbook, and you can find the links to this in the detail box below. We'll start by taking a look at the ingredients list. It is quite long, but don't be put off by this, as making the pudding itself is super easy and is best done well ahead of Christmas Day. We're going to start with soaking all the dried fruits and nuts overnight, and for this you'll need 75 grams or 2/3 of a cup of currants, 70 grams or half a cup of raisins, and 45 grams or 1/3 of a cup of dried pitted dates. To go into the pudding, I'm going to use 45 grams or 1/3 of a cup of ready-to-eat dried apricots and 20 grams or 2 tablespoons of glacé or candied cherries. However, if you find these hard to find in your local store, then it's fine to use dried cherries instead. Here's 25 grams or 1/4 of a cup of pecan halves, plus 20 grams or 1/4 of a cup of flaked or slivered almonds. If you don't want to use nuts, just replace the pecans and almonds with a mixture of sunflower and pumpkin seeds instead. Now this bit is absolutely optional, as it's for decorating the top of the pudding. In this little dish I have an extra 3 apricots, glacé cherries and pecan halves, and I'm going to set these aside until later. Here I have a small lemon and orange, and as we'll be using the peel of these, it's best if they are organic and unwaxed. Now this may seem an unusual ingredient, as I'm going to use half of this organic carrot, but trust me when I say it really helps make a lovely moist pudding. Just think of carrot cake if it helps to make sense of this ingredient. You'll also need a nice firm eating apple. For flavouring, we're going to use 1 vanilla pod, 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg, plus 1/4 teaspoon each of mixed spice, which is similar to pumpkin spice, ground cinnamon and ground ginger, and 1/2 teaspoon of good quality vanilla extract. This is a bottle of Angostura bitters, which are often used in cocktails, and it will add a really complex depth of flavour to the pudding. However, the bitters are really concentrated, so I'm only going to add 1 teaspoon. Finally, to make this pudding pleasantly bluesy, but still gluten-free, instead of adding beer in my mixture, I'm using 2 tablespoons of apple cider, called hard cider in the USA, plus another 2 tablespoons of amaretto liqueur. However, if you don't want to use alcohol at all, just swap the cider and amaretto to plain apple juice and leave out the bitters too. Also, I want to share a tip here. In my videos, I always weigh out all my ingredients in advance so that I can show them to you, but normally I wouldn't expect you to do the same. However, for a recipe like this, where there are lots of different ingredients, getting them all ready in advance can be useful in making sure that nothing gets missed. I'm going to show you in a minute what the first step is with all the fruits, nuts and booze, as they're going to end up like these in this bowl. But at this point, let's continue with the rest of the ingredients list. So you will also need 60 grams or 1 cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs, which I made by pulsing a couple of gluten-free bread slices in my mini food processor, plus 35 grams or 1/4 of a cup of gluten-free plain or all-purpose flour blend. In this little dish, I have 1/2 tablespoon of corn flour or cornstarch, 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum, and 1/4 teaspoon of gluten-free baking powder. Instead of using vegetable suet, which often contains gluten, my recipe uses 30 grams or 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, such as Trex in the UK or Crisco in the USA, and 20 grams or 1.5 tablespoons of coconut oil. Next is 60 grams or 1/4 of a cup packed of soft brown sugar, and I'm using dark, but you can also use light, as well as 2 tablespoons of ground almonds. You can see that I've now grated half of the carrot that I showed you earlier, And I'm going to grate the apple directly into the mixing bowl so that I can catch all of its juices. Finally, here's one free-range egg, which is size medium in the UK or large in the US. If you wanted to make this vegan, swap the egg for a flaxseed egg by soaking 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds in 3 tablespoons of water for 15 minutes and using that instead. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for lots more gluten-free recipes. Now let's get cooking. The night before making the pudding, prepare and soak the dried fruits and nuts. Wash the orange and lemon thoroughly. Use a small sharp knife to pierce the lemon 5 to 6 times, then pop it into a saucepan and cover with cold water. Place over a medium heat and bring up to a gentle simmer and cook for 30 minutes. Then drain it and set aside until cool enough to handle. In the meantime, chop the apricots into pieces of a similar size to your currants and raisins. Do the same with the glacé cherries and the dates, making sure that you've removed the stones if they are not pitted. Pop these all into a roomy mixing bowl. Finally, roughly chop the pecans too. The cooked lemon should now be cool enough to handle. Cut off the nib from the top of the lemon, then cut it in half and get rid of any pips. Finally, chop the whole lemon, flesh and peel, into small pieces. Tip this and any juices on top of the fruit and nuts. Cut the vanilla pod in half lengthwise and scrape out the seeds. Add both the seeds and the scraped out pod to the bowl. Cut the orange in half and wrap 1/2 in kitchen film and set aside for the morning. All the chopping has now been done. So add the mixed spice, ground cinnamon and ginger to the bowl and grate in the nutmeg, followed by the zest from half of the orange. Now add the raisins, currants and flaked almonds and the juice from the zested orange half. Pour over the cider, vanilla extract, Angostura bitters and amaretto. Give everything a lovely good stir, then cover the bowl with a clean dry cloth and leave to soak overnight. It smells fabulous. So, it's now the following morning and I'm going to start by showing you how to prepare the pudding basin for the Christmas pudding. You'll need a heat-proof pudding basin. This one has a capacity of 1.1 litres or 4.5 cups, which is ample. The cooked Christmas pudding will end up weighing just over 900 grams or 2 pounds, and this size pudding will serve 6 to 8 people. I've also got the reserved cherries, apricots, pecans and half orange from yesterday, and we'll come on to wine and mo. You're also going to need a little oil or vegetable shortening to grease the basin, and I do this with a food brush, but if you don't have one, a piece of kitchen towel will also work. I've got a pencil, a good pair of scissors and some kitchen string, plus kitchen foil and baking parchment. Fold the baking parchment in half and trace around both the top and bottom of the pudding basin with a pencil. Then cut inside the lines to cut out 1 small circle and 2 larger circles. It's important to cut inside the lines so that there's no pencil lead left on the circles, like this. Set aside. Take a piece of foil and fold a pleat into the middle, making sure that it's still large enough to cover the top of the basin generously. Take another 2 pieces of foil that are long enough to go all the way around the pudding basin from top to bottom and back. Now, as is the tendency when filming, I've cut mine in half lengthwise, but I really didn't need to do this. Simply fold each piece of foil into half lengthwise and then in half again to form 2 long and strong lengths of foil. These are going to be crossed over to form a lifter for getting the pudding in and out of the steamer or slow cooker, just like this. Now lightly grease the pudding basin and pop the smaller parchment circle in the bottom. Slice the reserved orange half into 3 to 4 rounds. Arrange the reserved pecans and apricots on the top of the parchment disc. Slice the cherries in half and pop these in too, taking care to ensure that the right side of the cherries and pecans are facing the bowl, so that they'll turn out the right way when the pudding is served. Lay the orange slices prettily around the edges and set aside. Now let's finish the pudding mixture. Remember to remove the vanilla pod from the bowl. Coarsely grate the apple into the bowl along with the carrot, which I've grated already to save a bit of time in the video. Give it a good stir with a wooden spoon to mix. Sieve in the flour, corn flour, baking powder, xanthan gum and brown sugar. Work this through the sieve to remove any lumps in the sugar. I've melted the coconut oil and vegetable shortening until they're both fully liquid, and I'm going to add this to the bowl too, along with the ground almonds, the egg or flaxseed egg if you're using this instead, and the breadcrumbs. Now beat everything together thoroughly until well combined. In the UK, we have a tradition whereby everyone in the family takes a turn at stirring the pudding and making a wish. So now's the time to bring the family together for their stir and wish. Spoon the pudding mix into the prepared basin, taking care to pat it down as you go so that there are no air pockets. When all the mixture is in the basin, smooth out the top, then cover directly with the 2 larger parchment discs. Wrap the pleated foil over the top of the pudding basin and tie securely with kitchen string, which is always easier to do if you're not filming at the same time. Centralise the pudding on the 2 strips of foil, but only lift the pudding with these at the last moment to place it in the steamer or slow cooker. You can cook the pudding in the top of a steamer of simmering water, but I prefer to use a slow cooker. I pop a heat-safe ramekin in the bottom to act as a trivet and lift in the pudding. Then I carefully pour in enough boiling water down the side to come halfway up the side of the basin, and I'm taking care not to splash myself or the pudding with the boiling water. Then I cover with a well-fitting lid and cook for 8 hours in a steamer or 10 to 12 hours in a slow cooker on high. If you use a steamer, regularly check and make sure that it's topped up with freshly boiled water, and even with a slow cooker, I'll top it up 2 to 3 times during the cooking time. After cooking, remove from the heat and set aside to cool fully. Once fully cooled, cut off the string and remove the foil lid and parchment paper. If any condensation has formed inside the basin whilst it was cooling, wipe this away with kitchen towel. Replace with fresh parchment circles. Cover the whole pudding basin tightly in kitchen film, and the pudding can now be stored for up to 6 months. Just tuck it into a cool, dark place. You can also keep your foil lifters to reuse too. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have. You'll find the instructions on how to reheat the pudding on Christmas Day in the description box below. You can also find this recipe in my gluten-free Christmas holiday festive feasts and treats cookbook, which is available as a paperback or Kindle book from Amazon or as an ebook from iBooks, Nook or Kobo. All the links to my book are in the description box below too. I hope you'll want to watch more videos in my gluten-free cooking series like these ones here. Thank you so much for your company. Please also let me know if you make this or if you'd like to see a video of any other of my recipes, and bye for now.